If you enjoy these stories or this content, please join us on the Freedom from the Struggle podcast, where we'll continue our discussions on demons and spiritual warfare. You can listen every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on most podcast applications. You can also find us on YouTube and Rumble. We hope to see you soon. Chapter 2. Can you help us? The first person up in the morning was Maria. She got up about 11 o'clock and began to make breakfast. It was closer to lunchtime, but breakfast seemed like a better choice. She put on some bacon and started making eggs and French toast. It was not long before the smell worked like an alarm clock. Soon, the entire group was sitting at the dining room table, drinking orange juice and eating enormous amounts of food. The group sat quietly, and only the sound of forks hitting plates filled the house. Finally, Billy broke the silence and said, "So, when is that priest coming over?" Carlo was prompted to make a follow-up call. He held up a finger and then went into the living room. The group could hear him confirming the appointment he had made the night before. Carlo hung up the phone and came back into the dining room. He said, "He will be here about 4 this afternoon. He's very receptive to the story. I think he believes me. I can't wait for him to come." The group agreed that they were looking forward to his arrival. After the late breakfast, the group went to work. Billy went upstairs with 2 tasks. He was to put his room completely together, and he was also supposed to finish unpacking all the boxes in the upstairs bathroom. It was estimated that it would only take him about 2 hours. That was an effective use of his time, and it would help keep his mind off the night before. He seemed more willing to go upstairs in the daylight. Bridgette and Maria were devoted to the cause of completing the kitchen. They would line the shelves and put away the dishes. They were going to pull the refrigerator and the stove away from the wall to make sure that it was clean behind them. Their ultimate goal was to have a fully functioning kitchen before the priest arrived. The two of them believed that they could achieve this goal and maybe even tackle the living room and dining room areas. Carlo's job was to hook up the washer and dryer in the basement. Once that task was completed, he was to move into the family room and set up the rest of the entertainment center and move the sectional into its permanent position. He had made one task his primary assignment. He was going to find the box of crosses and hang them throughout the house. Between Gio and Bridgette, they had several crosses that could be hung in every room of the house. Carlo was on the job. Gio was to finish the master bedroom. He was to unpack the boxes of clothes and put them in the drawers. He was also to set up the master bathroom so that before the night was over, the master area was completed. If everyone achieved their goal, the entire house would be done except for the nursery. They would wait to set that up until after they attached some decorative wall hangings and paint to allow the room to be a dream nursery. At 2 in the afternoon, the group convened for a small status update. The house was done except for the pictures on the walls. Bridgette was definitely the one in charge and was constantly ordering everybody to place things exactly where she wanted them. Even she had to be impressed at the progress. The group decided that they had another hour before showers and then the meeting with the priest. Bridgette and Maria hung pictures and set up all decorative items in place. Gio, Carlo, and Billy went out to the garage and got to work out there. The garage was full of shelving, and there was plenty of room for Gio's lifestyle, including a garage refrigerator. After some demanding work, Carlo looked at his watch and said, "It's just about 3 in the afternoon. Are we done?" Gio looked around and said, "I can't believe it, but yes. Everything's in place, even my tools. We're a heck of a team." The 3 high-fived and then decided to admire their work. Billy accidentally ruined the moment. He said, It would suck if we did all this work and then we had to move. What if that priest can't get the demon out of here? Carlo and Gio did not respond. It was a legitimate concern. Billy said, "Well, if the priest can't help, I bet that guy in Highlands Ranch can. I was watching him on the internet. He must know what he's doing." The reporter said that she had investigated his past and that he's some sort of underground exorcist. She had interviewed a family that he helped. They had nothing but good stuff to say about him. Gio said, "Well, let's see what the priest can do. If not, we'll try to get a hold of that guy. What's his name, by the way?" Billy said, "His name is Anthony Corelli." Carlo made a joke about that sounding like a mafia name. Gio responded, "What are you talking about, Carlo Carmine Pingatore?" They all laughed and went inside. The ladies had completed their project as well. Bridgette commented on the fact that the group had finished the house in about 3 hours. Everyone thought it would take days. They all took pride in their work before they agreed to take some quick showers. Since the priest was coming at 4, they only had about an hour. The ladies went first since the process of getting ready to entertain a priest would take a while. The men would go last. Gio wished he had not been a gentleman since he had no hot water at all by the time it was his turn. He sucked it up and took a quick shower in the coldest water he could have imagined. Even though the men went last, they still managed to get ready before the women. The women finished promptly at 4. The priest showed up at about 5 minutes past 4. Perfect timing was not an adequate phrase. The day before had been chaotic, ending in a terrifying experience. Today, everything had seemed to fall into place. Maria commented that Gio's prayer from the night before had worked. When the doorbell rang, Bridgette answered the door. There stood Father Frank Doyle, the stereotypical priest. He was a 60-year-old Irishman who looked like he had been typecast for a movie about a priest that shows up to pray for a family in trouble. He was a very pleasant and personable man. He shook everyone's hand and looked everybody in the eye as he did it. He was a very likable guy, and his compassion oozed from his pores. After fetching the priest a cup of coffee, Bridgette sat down in the living room as Father Doyle began to ask questions. Gio was selected to be the spokesperson as the priest wanted to know what was going on in the home. Gio gave many details and tried not to leave anything out. As he was describing the events of the past evening, the group often jumped in and offered details that they felt like Gio was leaving out. Father Doyle listened intently as the group finished with the details of the terror they had survived. When Gio was finished, Father Doyle nodded his head as if he were contemplating what he had been told. Then the priest asked, "Who lived here before you did?" Bridgette said, "My brother lived here with his wife. They were moving and asked us if we wanted to take over the lease." Father Doyle then asked, "Did they say anything about seeing things in this house?" Gio then jumped in and said, "Bridgette's sister-in-law said that she didn't like the house anymore." The priest took his time absorbing the information. Then he said, "Well, I would imagine there's a whole lot that your brother and his wife are not telling you. If I could be so bold, what kind of a jerk rents a house to his sister if he knows there are strange occurrences in the home he is leaving? I would like to ask you to call him or your sister-in-law and ask exactly what has happened in this house. Would you do that for me?" The priest seemed to know his stuff and had already formed an opinion. The group waited as Bridgette dialed up her sister-in-law's number. Intuitively, she knew that talking to Sandy would be better than talking to her brother. Besides, what the priest said had made her angry at Randy. On the second ring, Sandy picked up the phone and asked how the move was going. Bridgette spent only a couple seconds on small talk. She said, "Sandy, I have to ask you a real serious question. Did you ever see anything in this house that was out of the ordinary, like a ghost or a spirit or something like that?" Sandy paused for a long time. So long was the pause that the group thought she had hung up. Finally, she said, "Well, Randy wasn't honest with you like he said he would be. I better tell you the truth. Yes, I have seen something in that house. That's why I wanted to move." Gio was angry, and not just at Randy. How could Sandy allow this? She was just as culpable. He wanted to lash out, but what good would it do? He simply let Bridgette be the wrecking ball. She snapped at Sandy. What did you see here, Sandy? Do not lie to me. What did you see? Sandy did not hesitate. Now that the cat was out of the bag, why hold back? She said, I saw a figure in that upstairs bedroom at the back of the house. I saw a man in there. He would just stare at me when I went upstairs. By the time we moved out, I hardly ever went up there. Bridgette voiced her concern about the fact that she had been deceptive. Sandy was extremely apologetic and vowed to read Randy the riot act when he returned from running errands. The priest interjected and asked Bridgette to ask if there are any occult practices in the home. Sandy again spoke like a mouse when she said that she had used a Ouija board on several occasions with the neighbor. The priest seemed satisfied with the answers. It had confirmed his suspicions. Bridgette hung up with her sister-in-law, but she was going to call back when the priest left the home. She had a bone to pick, and it was going to be the kind of bone you pick when a clergyman was not around. In other words, she was going to cuss them out. For now, she was hoping that the priest could solve their problem. So far, he had shown that he had significant knowledge on the subject. Father Doyle asked if he could walk around the house on his own as the group sat in the living room awaiting his return. He completed his tour of the home with a trip to the basement. When he came upstairs and sat back on the living room sofa, he had in his hand a box that contained the Ouija board. He threw it on the coffee table and said, Well, here's the source of your problem, and trust me, this is a big problem. There's a demon here. Your brother and sister-in-law summoned a demon playing with that thing. The demon has some deep roots here. I believe they use the room upstairs to do their seances, and that's where it resides. It is a powerful demon, and it has bad intentions. I'm discerning that it doesn't want to leave. The group sat stunned. This sounded like a movie, like a nightmare. They were unsure what to do next, so Carlo, who knew the priest, asked, So, Father, do you think that you can send this thing away? Honestly, son, I don't know. I'm going to say a blessing over this house. If that does not work, I know a guy who you can call who is a demonologist. He deals with this stuff all the time. Gio said, Is the guy you're talking about named Anthony Corelli? The priest said, No, his name is Jeremiah Stone. He works here in the metro area. I've referred a lot of people to him, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's try a traditional Catholic blessing. The priest had brought a bag with him. In the matter of a couple of minutes, he had added some clothing and had produced a bottle of holy water and an incense burner. He walked around the house sprinkling holy water as the incense filled every nook and cranny of the house. Gio was worried that the smoke may set off the smoke alarm. Fortunately, it did not. The family sat praying as the priest went from room to room speaking in Latin and blessing the home. When he was done, the house felt better. Billy asked, Do you think that it worked, Father? The priest would not commit to a solid yes, but he spoke as if he thought the spirit was gone from the home. The family all thanked the priest and asked if he would like to stay for dinner. The priest did his best to deny the meal, but it was easy to see that he wanted to stay. It didn't take much convincing him to sit at the table and join the group. As they all sat around and talked, Bridgette had prepared an amazing breaded chicken dish that was to die for. The group sat and ate as the priest seemed to shed his formality. He joked and laughed with the family. He spoke of football as if he were a former professional. He knew about offenses and defenses and quoted statistics like that is what he did for a living. It was an exceptionally delicious meal and a very enjoyable time of fellowship. The family had forgotten all about the events of the previous evening. Before anyone could blink, it was 7 in the evening. Time had flown by, and the priest seemed to realize that he had some other chores to tend to as he jumped to his feet. He thanked Bridgette for the amazing meal and made a comment about Gio and Bridgette getting married soon and him being the man to perform the ceremony. He said, "That will give me plenty of reasons to come over here and eat some more of this exquisite cooking." Bridgette blushed at the compliment. The priest made a polite but direct comment about Bridgette and Gio living together out of wedlock. He was giving a strong hint. They took no offense. Father Doyle asked if he could please use the restroom prior to heading back to the rectory. Gio pointed the way, and then the priest ascended the stairs and disappeared into the bathroom. The group began to whisper about how much they liked the priest. He was very real and very compassionate. They all had nothing but good things to say about him. As the family talked, Father Doyle stood at the top of the stairs and made a joke about talking about a person when he can hear them. They all looked to the top of the stairs to see Father Doyle was eavesdropping. The priest said, "At least you were all saying wonderful things about me." Then he broke out into a very boisterous laugh that lit up the room. The group all joined him in the laugh. The laugh, however, was short-lived. As the 5 of them all had eyes on the priest, they saw him fly down the stairs as if pushed by a tremendous force. He flew so far that he almost missed the stairs completely. He landed hard on the hardwood living room floor. Father Doyle let out a moan that ensured them that he was injured. Carlo got to him first and asked him where he was hurt. He replied, "Everywhere." Carlo told him not to move, but he slowly rose to his feet and made his way to the sofa. Maria tended to him, making sure there were no broken bones or major injuries. There was nothing visible, but the priest was obviously in pain. He was also short of breath. Gio said, "I think we need to call an ambulance." Father Doyle replied, "I'll be okay. I'll just drive home and get in bed." As he shifted his weight, he winced in pain. Gio said, "I'm sorry, Father, but I'm going to call the ambulance. At least let them check you out." The priest did not argue, as he knew that something may be wrong. Soon an ambulance and 2 police cars were in the driveway. The paramedics were inside looking him over. One of the police officers was asking Father Doyle, "So what happened, Father?" The priest said, "I'm not sure. I ate dinner and I went to the bathroom. I was standing at the top of the stairs getting ready to walk down. Next thing you know, I was at the bottom of the stairs." That was not necessarily a lie, but everyone in the house knew that he was pushed. The police officers individually asked the family what happened. They all gave a similar story. To a bystander, that is exactly what happened. To someone who had been living this experience, they knew that something paranormal had occurred. The police seemed satisfied that it was an accident. The paramedics loaded Father Doyle onto a gurney and got him ready for transport. He asked them to give him a few seconds with the family. He called Bridgette over to him. He told her to write down the number of the demonologist that she should call. Of course, he did not use the word demonologist in front of the paramedics. Gio followed the gurney out to the street. He assured the priest that he would lock up his car and help get it back to him when he was out of the hospital. Carlo offered to go to the hospital with the priest, but Father Doyle informed him that a representative from the church would meet him there and sit with him until he was released. The priest stated he would call and check in with them when he was able. As Gio and Carlo walked back to the house, a neighbor from directly next door came over. Bridgette was standing on the porch. The neighbor introduced herself as Ashley Connors. The group introduced themselves. The woman was very strange in her affect. The group was unsure as to the point of her visit. It was unclear if she was just being a nosy neighbor or if she was formally introducing herself. Maybe it was a little bit of both. Gio asked her, "So Ashley, how long have you lived here?" She responded, I've lived in this house for about 7 years. I used to live here with my husband and our daughter. They both died in a terrible accident, so now I live here alone. Bridgette said, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry for your loss. How long ago did this happen?" Ashley replied, "About 18 months ago. Hey, I know you. I've seen you in this house before." Bridgette replied, "My brother used to live here. I've been here many times." There was an awkward silence, which the group chalked up to mental illness. Finally, Gio said, "Well, I think we're going to turn in for the night, but it was very nice to meet you." He could barely get his sentence out when she said, "It's this house. There's something in that house. I would tell you to move, but it's already too late. It knows who you are, and it will just follow you wherever you go." Again, there was an awkward pause. Finally, Bridgette said, "Why don't you come inside and tell us what you know?" Ashley replied, "Oh no, dear. I will never set foot in that house again. I know what's in there." Bridgette parroted her phrase. "What is in there?" Ashley boldly proclaimed, "It's a demon, an immensely powerful demon. That's why it hurt the priest. It is never going to leave that house. Sometimes when I'm in my bedroom," she said as she pointed up to the window of her house, "I see it staring at me, just hovering in the air." Gio said, "What does it look like?" She quickly replied, "You already know. It's a black figure. It looks like a man with no face. It's like a shadow, only darker." Gio continued, since he was in the mood to gather information. "Has it been there the whole time?" She said, "I think so. I didn't know the old neighbor really well, but they packed up and moved to California just a few years ago. In fact, they left in the middle of the night. Movers came and packed their belongings." By this time, Maria and Billy had made their way to the porch. Ashley continued, "They put an ad on the internet to rent the house. That's when Randy and Sandy moved in. We used to come over here all the time, me and my husband. We used to be good friends. Honestly, we came over the very first day to help them move in. We all hit it off right from the start. The first day was the day that should have been a clue as to what was going on." The group was intrigued. They had no questions, only the motivation to listen. Ashley paused as if she was remembering something that she did not want to remember. Then she proceeded with her story. "When I went to the basement the first day, I noticed that the family had left a few items on that bookshelf down there. It was mostly old paint cans and some old books. The books looked like they were antiques. They had weird symbols on them, so I opened one. It looked like it had spells in it, like something a witch would use." Gio intuitively knew that this was the source of the demon. He asked, "So, the previous owners were the ones that summoned the demon?" She said, "I can see that in hindsight, but back then, I didn't believe in that stuff. I wasn't even sure how long the books had been on that shelf. Speaking of the shelf, the only other item on there was a Ouija board. I grabbed it and brought it upstairs. I had used one when I was younger at a party. I wanted to try it again. Before I knew it, we all agreed to meet that weekend and have a seance in that bedroom upstairs. They had it set up like an office, so it was the perfect spot." Bridgette looked at Gio and said, "Great. And that's where we're going to put our baby. We need to move, Gio. We need to move tomorrow. I don't care if we lose our deposit. We need to find a different place to live." Gio said, "I agree. This is too much. I can't believe your brother did this to us." Ashley butted in and said, "Moving isn't going to help. It will follow you. I tried to tell Randy and Sandy, but they didn't listen. They stopped talking to me a while back. They said I was weird. I guess I am, but I know what I'm saying." Carlos said, "Well, what is it that they need to do?" Ashley said, "They're going to have to find a pastor or a priest that can fight that thing. All I know is that it's powerful. It will not be easy. I'm sorry that this happened to you. You didn't deserve this." Carlo continued, "So did the Ouija board work? Did you summon something?" She did not hesitate. "Well, what do you think? We used to meet every Friday for months. The four of us thought we had found a spirit guide who can help us in life. Geo and Bridgette were listening closely because they had just encountered that Ouija board. They instantly wanted it out of the house. Bridgette had a million questions, but she wanted Ashley to keep talking. This woman was doing fine on her own. Ashley pushed forward. One day, we were in that room with the lights off and candles lit. It was like any of the other nights. I asked the spirit guide who it was. The spirit said it was ancient. I then asked it to show itself. That was a big mistake. Ashley seemed to get choked up. She was so awed that seeing her emotional almost made her look a little normal. She then looked up with a very intense look on her face. She said, "I saw it. It was that black figure. It was standing in the corner. I screamed when I saw it. My husband tried to close the door to the spirit world, but it took over the board. None of us were touching it, but it was moving on its own. It started spelling out something. It took a second to realize that it said my husband and my daughter would soon be dead. I ran out of that house and I have never been back in there." Bridgette allowed some time to catch her breath. She finally asked, "Ashley, how long from when it said those terrible things did your family die?" Ashley answered, "About 3 months." The group all gave their condolences again. Ashley continued, "My husband and daughter died under strange circumstances. For a long time, the police thought it was me that killed them. In fact, the case is still open. They can investigate me all they want. It wasn't me that did it. It was that thing." With this, the woman walked across the lawn and up to her house. The group did not stop her, as her pain was evident. They all stood and watched her open the door and disappear into her house. They had so much information that it was too much to process. Unfortunately, information was not going to solve this problem. They would try and get some sleep and try again in the morning. They all walked back into the house in complete shock. Geo was the first one awake when he noticed the sun peeking through the window. Since the room was partially sunk in below ground, the window well in the bedroom did not let in much light. He looked over at the alarm clock. It was 15 minutes after 9. He still felt tired, but he knew it was time to get up and get a hold of this demonologist. He went into the bathroom and intentionally made noise to wake the others. He turned on the shower and jumped in. He figured he would get ready first and call the demonologist as the rest of the group prepared for the day. He was drying off and putting on his clothes when he heard Billy scream a series of expletives a mile long. He immediately opened the bathroom door and went out to investigate. Billy was standing in the living room on the main level. What he was looking at was immediately obvious. All the living room furniture had been rearranged. It was very neatly set up as if someone else had decorated. Right in the center of the room was the coffee table. On that coffee table was the Ouija board. The Ouija board that Carlo had disposed of the night before. Geo looked out the front window just in time to catch Ashley running through the front yard towards her house. Then he looked a little to his left and saw that the front door was ajar. He felt his blood boil. He went downstairs and finished getting dressed with a purpose. He slipped on his shoes and went next door. He rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. He rang it over and over. He began to pound on the door and shout, "I know you're in there, Ashley. I just saw you." Finally, she opened the door and said, "I'm sorry, Geo. It's not what you think." Geo was having none of that. He said, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest. Do you have a key to my house?" Ashley did not answer. She left the door open and walked down the hallway to the kitchen. Geo did not enter the house, but he could see her the entire time. She came back down the hall and handed him the key. She said, "Again, Geo, I'm sorry. It's not what you think." He shouted, "Were you in my house?" She nodded yes and sat there like a small child who was in trouble with her parents. He continued, "Why were you just in my house? Were you arranging my furniture?" "Yes, I went into your house, but I was not the one who rearranged that furniture." "Well, why in hell were you in my house?" "I heard someone calling me when I was drinking coffee. It was telling me that you needed help." "So you just used your key and walked into my house? Why didn't you just ring the doorbell?" "The voice told me to use the key because you were all in danger. Please understand, I haven't been in that house in a long time. The only reason I went in was to see if you were okay. I was about ready to call out your name when I heard the shower come on. I was going to wait until I heard something else. I must have blacked out. I don't remember what happened after that." Gio was unsure if he should believe her or call the police. She was so odd, but at the same time, she seemed just as frightened as he was. She said, "Next thing I remember, I was standing in the front yard and your boy started cussing up a storm. I didn't know if I should go back in or run. When I saw you, I just reacted. I'm so sorry. It will not happen again." Gio said, "Do you hear voices a lot?" "All the time. I didn't always hear them, not until I went into that damn house." Then she walked back into her home and shut the door. Gio went back in and explained Ashley's story to Bridgette and the others. This prompted so many questions. Was she the one who rearranged the furniture? Was she the one that they kept seeing in the house? Was it possible that she was dressed in all black and scaring the family? She seemed to have schizophrenia or some other disorder that caused her to hear voices. Then again, there had to be a demon in the home because there was no one there when Father Doyle was pushed down the stairs. They discussed calling the police, but what had she really done? And besides, that would prompt a whole lot of questions about demons and the priest who had just been pushed down the stairs the night before. This was futile. The best thing to do was to call the demonologist and get this thing out of the house. They would deal with the crazy neighbor when it was all said and done. Gio called and got a hold of a man named Jeremiah Stone. By the grace of God, he was available to come that evening. He would bring a small team with him and some equipment. This made Gio and Bridgette feel some relief. They set up a meeting at 30 minutes after 5. They all found hope in this meeting. They all decided to put the furniture back where it was. After, Maria decided to make some breakfast. They had hope that they could find the underlying cause of this dilemma. Gio had one more call to make. He was going to call Randy and give him a piece of his mind. He dialed the phone, and Randy answered on the first ring. That was a mistake on Randy's part.